Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm making a Magic Iris Moon card inspired by the latest Lawn Fanatics challenge. So this is the second time I'm playing with my Magic Iris die, and I'm going to zoom through the creation, but you can check out the previous video I made with it if you'd like to see more slowly how it's put together. Basically, you need to cut 3 of the rings, 3 stabilizers, and 3 of the little balloon sausage things. Then one of the rings gets cut through with the octopus die, which creates the slots to put the balloons in. You then put glue dots if you have them, which I don't, so I put double-sided tape onto the X's on the balloons, put the second ring on top, spin it over, put the stabilizers on the bottom, spin it over again and put your pull tab into position. Then you put your third ring on top and fold the stabilizers over. Now when I made my one the other day, I did have a lot of trouble with the rings not staying in place, which I suspected was because I didn't have glue dots, and I did get it to work in the end with the double-sided tape, but here again it just wasn't wanting to work properly, and in the end I bought in some homemade glue dots that I wasn't sure if they were going to work or not. I hadn't had a chance to give them a go, but I bought some of those in and put them in with my reverse tweezers so I could get into the mechanism, and it worked perfectly, which was quite a surprise. So I will be doing a video soon on how I made those glue dots, but the lesson from this is that yes, you do want to use glue dots for the Magic Iris. It will save a lot of heartache. With the iris itself ready, I'm going to move on to creating my background. I have a panel of black card the same size as my card base, so that's A2 size, and I'm going to cut the ring into it, which gives me the perfect space to fit my iris mechanism into, and it also gives me a ring that I can sit on top and hide the workings of the mechanism. I'll use the ring as a guide to draw in where I want to create my little moon. And then I'm going to ink blend into that circle with various colours to create said moon. So I'm using just a really tiny ink blending brush, and I started with Spiced Marmalade Distress ink. I have a picture of an orange moon that I'm using as a guide to help me work out how to do my colours. I don't follow it exactly, but I did find it pretty useful for working it all out. Next I bought in Squeeze Lemonade Distress ink, which doesn't show up that well on the orange card base, but it just helped add a little bit of brightness to my moon. I felt like the colour wasn't quite right because those shadow areas on the moon picture have more of a brownish tone to them, so I did bring in Simon Says Stamp's Early Beige to try and add that shading. And then I also decided to bring in a little bit of Twilight ink to darken it up even more, which I think worked nicely. I really think this is just a case of trial and error, and there's no real science to doing this. It's whichever inks you have that you feel would work best. I also wanted to add a bit of highlight to the moon just to help enhance the roundness, so I bought in some white pigment ink as well for that. And as I was doing it, I felt like it really did look quite a mess. But each time I brought the ring across and laid the ring into place over my ink blending, it kind of made it clearer what it is. I felt at least it looks more like a moon when it has that black around it rather than when it has the rest of the orange card base showing around it. And I did go back and forth across it with the different colours, building it up until I was really happy with how it looked. And by the way, today's secret word for the giveaway is moon, so make sure to leave that in your comments. I wanted my black panel and black ring and the opening of the iris to have stars, which if I'd thought ahead, I would have done this before everything was assembled and used metallic watercolours to do splatters. But as I'd already assembled the pieces, I instead decided to use gel pens to put the stars on and try to keep it relatively random. So that was with a white gel pen and a glitter gel pen. I did seem to end up with the stars being more concentrated on the iris part, which wasn't the plan and doesn't look as random as it could, but it's not bad enough that I would have been willing to start over with the iris because of course I've already put quite a lot of effort into that. I adhered the starry black ring onto the top of the iris with my double-sided tape, and then I'll adhere the background panel onto my card base as well, again with double-sided tape. I then used my MISTI to help me get this lined up, so I put the fold of the card right up against the edge of the MISTI, and then when I put the panel down into that edge, it will be perfectly lined up. I'll then move the MISTI back out the way so that I could adhere the iris down. And when you're adhering the iris down, you want to put the adhesive only onto the stabilizers, because if you put it anywhere else, it's going to interfere with the movement of the iris. You do want to adhere the iris down with the opening closed so that you can make sure your pull tab is in the correct position. I, for some reason, adhered mine down with the pull tab too high up, so it was poking off the edge of the card. I think I was paying too much attention to getting the circle itself centered rather than paying attention to where the pull tab was, but luckily I did notice it a bit later and was able to carefully lift the iris up and reposition it slightly to fix that. Next, I'm going to create a hill for the foreground of my little scene, and I just used a snippet of black card and a craft knife to do this. I just freehanded the hill. This black card is fairly heavyweight, so I did have to go along it twice to get it completely cut through. I'm then going to just very lightly ink blend onto the top edge of my hill with the white ink, and then I also go over it with Twilight ink just to kind of make the hill stand out a bit more against the background. And I also do use the offcut of that black card to be able to add another hill in the foreground just with the ink blending, although I don't think this really shows up that well in the end, so I probably could have skipped this step. And then when all the ink blending is done and I go to put the hill into place is when I notice that the iris is in the wrong position. So as I said, I was able to carefully lift it up, probably in part because it's only adhered under those stabilizers, and position it correctly this time and check it still works, of course, before moving on to adhering the hill into place. I had some scraps of foam foam left over from before I quit buying foam foam and foam tape, and I thought they would work nicely for popping up that hill so that it's at the same level as the iris. And I did have to double up the foam foam to be deep enough, and then I put double-sided tape on top of it and again used the MISTI to help me get that hill into position. And I had cut that piece a bit long intentionally so I could position it exactly as I wanted, and then I'll just use my craft knife to trim away the excess. You can kind of see the blue every now and then peeking around the edges of the mechanism, depending how you're holding the card. In future, I think I'm going to try to remember to use the same colour card as I want the top of the ring to be. So here I think it would have been better if I'd used blue for the mechanism parts of the ring, just to disguise it a bit better, but that's quite a minor quibble. Moving on, I want a little critter to add to my scene, so I decided to use one of the monsters from Monster Mash, and I'm clear heat embossing him onto some more of that black card. And then I'm going to colour him in with my coloured pencils. I'm just doing really simple colouring. I'm putting some white along the left-hand side because he's going to be standing to the right-hand side of the moon. So I want my highlights on the side closest to the moon. And I just go in with the white first, which is a Caran d'Ache pencil. And then I'm going to use orange as well because the moon is orange. So there would be an orange highlight. And with the orange, I'm going over the white, but also drawing it out a bit more into the rest of the monster's body. And initially, that was the only colour I was planning on putting because I was imagining him being almost a see-through jelly monster. But I thought the contrast of adding some blue would help enhance the shape of him. So I did bring in a dark blue and put that into the shadows of his body. I also used the white to colour in his little eyeball and again put the orange into the left-hand side of that for highlight. I should have actually put some blue into the right-hand side of it for the shadows as well. So if you are recreating this, then I would recommend doing that, but it's not essential. After I'd finished colouring him in, I did fussy cut him out. And for a change, I don't need to go around the fussy cut image with my black brush marker because this card has a black core anyway, so there's nothing there to be disguised. I did use my orange pencil again to go along the edges of the hills because again they're going to be reflecting the orange of the moon. And then I realised I hadn't yet added my sentiment, so I'm going to be heat embossing I Think You're Neat from the Monster Mash stamp set onto my hill in white embossing powder, and I did have to be careful heating it because I don't want to melt the foam that's behind the panel, so I just made sure not to keep the heat on the card too long. With that done, all that's left to do is adhere the little monster into place. I wanted to make sure he wouldn't be uneven where he's over the edge of the hill, so I did put some snippets of the same black card behind his head, just to try and keep him level. And I'll also tuck a little bit underneath the top of the hill because the hill is very slightly higher than the iris now. And once I had those snippets behind the monster, I could just glue him down into position just above the sentiment. And I'll come in with a black pencil and just add a very slight shadow beneath him. And that will complete my card. So here's a final look at my Magic Iris Moon card with my little monster. I'm quite proud of how this turned out, and it definitely went quicker than my previous Magic Iris card. Not a lot quicker, but I'm getting there. I'm getting the hang of it, and I'm definitely going to enjoy making more of these in future. All the products I have used are linked below. They are affiliate links where possible. There's also the accompanying blog post, the link to the Rafflecopter, and the discount for my Etsy store, which is still ongoing if you'd like to purchase anything. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing with your friends, and shopping with the affiliate links if you do. There's a couple of other videos showing here if you'd like to see more from me straight away. Otherwise, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!